Do you think you can buy happiness? But at what price? I tried it once, and I admit it almost cost me my life. I'm Steve. I'm 44, and I'm a drug addict, I said when I went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Oh, yeah, it happens. For as long as I remember, I've been trying to change my life. For example, when I was a schoolboy, I came home every day after school. I didn't go out with my friends. I didn't try to meet girls. I went straight home. I knew that my mother was waiting for me at home and that she needed me. I would open the front door, drop my book bag in the hallway, and go to my bedroom. My mother was always there, didn't go out, didn't like the neighbors. She kept saying that they just wanted something to gossip about. Already in the corridor, the sharp smell of alcohol hit my nose. The house was dark, even during the day, because the windows were always curtained. My mother didn't like it when people stared at our house. That's what she said. On the way to her room, I collected scattered items, sometimes bottles of cheap drinks. I wonder if she ever eats, I asked myself. I always brought her a dinner, but I took it away 2 hours later, untouched. But there were plenty of empty bottles. As long as the house had at least some money from her grandfather's inheritance, she ordered alcohol delivered to the house. Are you home yet? She asked me. Yes, Mom, I would say to her and go to my room. This is my little kingdom. I always remembered the time when my father came home from work. My mother cooked a delicious dinner and called me from the street. The three of us would sit down at the table, thank God for everything we had, and only then would we start eating. God gives, God takes, as they say. But why was all this taken away from me? My father left us for another woman, and since that time has never called. My mother could not bear the betrayal and began to drink. First, once a month, then every day. I still tried to be a good son for her sake. I thought maybe she would remember me and return to being the same caring mother. I was wrong to hope. I was 24 when she died of cirrhosis of the liver. Imagine, the funeral was just me. It was awful to bury a single close to you, but still alone. I didn't know how to go on living, how to deal with the emptiness. Now I was completely alone. One morning someone rang the doorbell, and when I opened it, no one was there, and there was a flyer on the ground that said pain vaccine, and there was a message inside. Great minds have invented a vaccine for pain. This mental analgesic was quickly spread throughout the city among the local residents, but it did not go beyond its borders. The elders decided to keep the recipe a secret in order to become immortal and absolutely happy. So it was at first. Everyone could only envy them, and with the most real envy, they did not care about anything: the death of a neighbor, unhappy love, humiliation of honor and dignity, mistakes, insults, or quarrels. They were absolutely happy, forgetting about the wounds that can't be cured with skin antiseptic, wounds that don't heal. They figured out how to sew them up. Want to know how? Come. Then there was an address and location. To be honest, I didn't think for a long time this is what I needed. In the evening, I packed up and went to the indicated place. It was creepy unsociable. Then there was the door to the bunker. At this time, a guy came up. We looked at each other and realized that we were both going to the same event. He rang the doorbell, and I noticed a cool ring on his finger. My father gave it to me when I came of age. It's a family heirloom, he said, noticing my curious look. I felt awkward. They opened the door for us. It was quite cozy inside. A pleasant-looking girl stood at the entrance. She led us into the hall. There were several other people sitting there. We were all different: old men, women, and men. The only thing they all had in common was that their wounds didn't heal. A couple of minutes later, a middle-aged man came out to us. He immediately began to talk about his life, about the loss he had suffered, how lonely he felt, and how the pain vaccine had helped him. The sense of invincibility has given me the advantages in life that I am dealing with now. I have my own business, house, car, but the main thing is that I'm protected from everything that can harm, he said. I listened carefully and understood, and this is exactly what I needed. It is enough to please someone, to take responsibility for the sins of my parents, to blame myself for my own existence, for all the strikes that I received from my drunken mother. That's enough. At the end of the meeting, this man handed out questionnaires to all of us and asked which of us wanted to try the vaccine. The guy with the ring and I both raised our hands. The rest decided to think about it. I was told to come back in a week, and that dude was supposed to stay. After 7 days, I returned to this bunker. The man made the speech again. When everyone was gone, Jack, that was his name, invited me to dinner. We went into the dining room. He promised to let me try the vaccine. The vaccine was invented by my ancestors. We help those in need become happier because we know the value of happiness and know what grief is. I would like to continue the work of my great-grandfathers to help people free themselves, Jack said. He poured the same vaccine into my glass and told me to drink it down. It tasted like ordinary wine. I felt nothing but a little dizzy, and Jack immediately said that the effect would come later. We continued eating. I felt more and more dizzy. After my ancestor invented the vaccine, people started asking for more and more. They didn't know the measure. Over time, carelessness was replaced by indifference. Then came cynicism and coldness. Everything was devalued feelings, the taste of victory, empathy, fear of loss. But they forgot about the balance. Because there is no day if there is no night. Without yin, there is no yang. Happiness is not only good, but also bad. Without the terrible, the beautiful loses its uniqueness and beauty. Yes, Steve? He asked. I suddenly choked on my meat. I came across something solid. I spat it into my hand and saw the ring. Disgust, mixed with horror, came up in my mouth. Jack smiled and shouted that he was God and would restore the balance in the world, that he would punish all the unrighteous who wanted free happiness and rid the world of sinners. He grabbed a knife and tried to attack me, but I barely dodged, grabbed the candlestick, and hit Jack on the head. Then I ran out into the street before his assistants arrived. To my good fortune, the police came by. It turns out that the vaccine is a drug that cultists use to pump into people and then eat them. They thought of themselves as sort of keepers in this dirty world. I recovered from the shock and realized that happiness never comes for free. But I never got rid of my drug addiction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary. Let me tell you my unusual story, whether I was right or not. In general, since my childhood, I was an ordinary child. I didn't differ from my other peers. Everything would be fine, but one day when I came home from school, I saw my parents. In fact, they should be at work at that time. Their faces were agitated. It really scared me. I immediately went to them and find out what happened. My father said we should all go to a friend's house together. The friend's name was James. Unsuspecting, I agreed. Soon we found ourselves in an office. It's strange that we visit a friend at his work. When he started the conversation, he kept looking at me, asked how we were doing in the family. Is nothing unusual happening? I knew it wasn't just that. Then he asked me if I noticed any strange things in my life lately, but it was still the same as usual. Later I find out that this was not a friend of my father, but a psychologist. But why and for whom this appointment? I didn't understand. Our conversation was quiet. In a moment, I noticed that James was looking at me with an unusual look. You could even say demonic look. His eyes were bright red, and his brows were furrowed like the devil. This scared me very much, and I tried to ignore it. After the conversation, we drove home in silence. Everyone thought about their own things, and I was not happy because it seemed like my parents had cheated me about the psychiatrist. That seemed to be the end of it. I also continued to go to school and do my own things. But no, on the next day, when I came home from school, I saw the psychiatrist at our house. They were talking about something. When James saw me, he smiled maliciously. His eyes were still red. I noticed fangs and teeth, like he looked like a vampire. I got scared and yelled at him, "Get out of the house, you devil!" and ran quickly to the room and locked myself in. My parents ran after me. They were calling for me and shouting for me to open the door. It wasn't like them. They had never even raised their voices to me before. I was scared. I crawled under the bed. Mom began pounding viciously and harder and more furiously, and Father laughed in the background. It seemed that the door was about to break. I gathered my courage and quickly jumped out under the bed, and I jumped out of the window and ran quickly away from the house. In shock, I didn't even notice that I had already run for several miles. Sitting down to catch my breath, I began to think about what really happened. There were different options in my head, and only one thought kept repeating itself: that this psychiatrist was actually a devil in the guise of a man, and he wanted to ruin our perfect family. It was like an epiphany. I hated James very much, and the plan matured. I had to make sure that the psychiatrist has disappeared from our family. After thinking it over and calming down, I went home. I had to walk for a long time and returned only in the evening. When my parents were already asleep, I went quietly to my room and fell asleep. I woke up from the fact that my mother woke me up. My father and my psychiatrist, James, were also in the room. They all had red eyes and were laughing maliciously, and the appearance of the psychiatrist changed at times to the devil. He was wearing a black cloak and big horns. Sharp, bloody fangs protruded from his mouth. I broke away from my mother and ran to the kitchen. She grabbed a knife and tried to stab James. But just as my father grabbed my arm and pulled me back, I lost my balance and fell to the floor and lost consciousness. I didn't wake up until morning in the hospital. I saw 3 men in white coats standing over me. I couldn't move because my hands and feet were tied, and her mouth was taped shut, probably to keep her from screaming. One of them took out a syringe and gave me an injection. After that, everything began to blur around me and make me sleepy. Falling asleep, I saw the silhouette of the devil on the wall. I don't know how long I slept. When I woke up, I saw my mom and dad. She sat next to me on the bed and looked at me anxiously. When I came to myself, I thought it was over, and James won't bother us again. Later, the doctor came and said that I have schizophrenia. I couldn't believe it. This can't be happening, especially with me. And in addition to this, I have learned that I often scream in my sleep lately. But I didn't believe the doctor. I felt quite well, and with the exception of recent events, I didn't notice anything unusual. But the doctor still prescribed some pills and ordered a trip to the psychiatrist who was in the same hospital. He called him in to introduce me. This psychiatrist turned out to be quite a good and solid person. He asked me if I was feeling all right. He seemed quite a nice man. But in an instant, I saw his eyes flash red.